Q&A. We wanted to hand it over to Professor Robert Klinke. He had a presentation organized to talk about VCU's involvement in engineering.
As introduced, my name is Bob Klinke. I'm the chair of the electrical and computer engineering department. And I guess the first thing that I'll say is that VCU does not have a drone lab. We don't call them drones, we call them unmanned aerial vehicles. That's what everyone in the industry calls them. The Federal Aviation Administration calls them unmanned aerial systems. And that's an acknowledgement of that as much of the system is in the ground control and communications link is in the vehicle itself. So basically, what do we use? What are UAVs used for? Well, dirty, dull, or dangerous. Those are the types of tasks that these things are used for. And so we've got search and rescue, both land-based and sea-based, survival supply delivery, environmental protection. They're being used for preventing poaching, air and water quality monitoring, sea level wetlands monitoring, land animal tracking, weather forecasting. The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration is now sending UAVs into hurricanes to monitor hurricanes. Volcanic eruption prediction, monitoring the sulfur dioxide output of volcanic ash plumes to detect increases in those types of gases that usually precede a volcanic eruption. Commercial fish spotting. The very first UAV called the Scaneagle. Some of you are familiar with the military use of the drones might recognize that name. The Scaneagle was actually developed by a company called VCU for spotting schools of commercial fish or commercial fish. Utility right-of-way inspection, including power lines and pipelines. Storm damage assessment, again looking at power lines and other utilities after storms. Emergency communications relay, setting up emergency, essentially airborne cell towers in areas where you have natural disaster. Traffic monitoring, monitoring of sea lanes, construction of infrastructure in difficult terrain. Right now, those often use manned helicopters, which is very dangerous. So that you can use unmanned vehicles for that. Aerial photography, from everything from movie making to weddings. Helped a friend of mine last Saturday. His son proposed to his girlfriend on the 8th story of a building on the top of the building, and my friend flew a hexcopter up there with a sign that said, "Will you marry me, Ashley?" And it actually made it onto the 6 o'clock news. And he uses, in his business, hexacopters to do wedding photography. Delivery of packages. People are looking at potential in the near future of doing package delivery, FedEx and UPS with unmanned aerial vehicles. The Marine Corps is already doing it in military applications. There's a company out there that builds something they call the burrito bomber, where you call up and they'll drop a burrito with a parachute to you, I kid you not. Delivery of essential supplies to remote areas. Aeronautical research, which is one of the ones I'm going to show you. Green agriculture, looking at hyperspectral imaging for looking at crops in detail to determine exactly where you need the pesticides or you need the fertilizer and so forth and where you don't. And actually doing crop dusting. Most of the crop dusting in Japan actually is done using unmanned helicopters. And then obviously things like security, monitoring critical infrastructure like power plants and so forth, doing perimeter fence monitoring and things like that. And then monitoring people's own personal property, your own property lines, your herds of cattle, things like that. These are all, you'll notice that there is not a single military or law enforcement use in any of these that I just presented. And we're talking to companies about half of these specific uses. We've already started talking with companies about doing that. Right now, we can't do a lot of these things because the Federal Aviation Administration has a moratorium against the flying UAVs in the national airspace. But industry predictions are that when that moratorium is removed and commercial UAVs are allowed to operate in the national airspace, which they've been mandated to by Congress by 2015, There'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 70,000 new jobs created in that sector. And again, estimates are that U.S. loses some $27 million per day in economic activity for every day that we wait to do that. Total economic activity in 10 years after commercial UAVs allowed the NAS could be as high as $2 billion over the 10 years. Most countries in the European Union actually allow commercial flights of small UAVs, less than 2 kilograms, and they're working on policies for larger aircraft. Right now, commercial use of all UAVs in the national airspace of the United States is not allowed by the Federal Aviation Administration. And Japan and Brazil and a number of companies in Africa actually allow larger UAVs with longer endurance and so forth to operate in their airspace with certain controls. Okay. The VCU UAV lab was originally started in 2002 as a senior design project in computer engineering to develop a UAV for the AUVSI student competition. AUVSI stands for the Association of Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. It's an industry group that works. Was founded and is organized by people who work in the unmanned systems industry. Then we're talking about not only unmanned aerial vehicles, but unmanned boats, unmanned cars, unmanned submarines, all those types of things. And they run student competitions for all those different classes of vehicles. We have a student design system that flew in 2003 in the UAV competition. That VCU entry was the only one to use a student-developed autopilot, the only one to successfully fly the course autonomously, and the only one to successfully identify, and I hesitate to use the word targets, but they were just basically 4x8 sheets of plywood with painted letters on them to identify those targets on the ground, which is the point of the competition. We've participated in that student competition since 2003. Every year, on average, we've got 400 or 500 graduate students and 1 graduate student that participated in the competition. VCU teams have placed first or second 3 times since 2003. Members of student teams themselves have won over $10,000 in prize money since 2003. And expenses for the team are paid for by school engineering donors, specific donations that were made to the competition team. Here's some pictures of the competition, and there's a couple of teams up there. We've done unmanned helicopters before. Now we're using a fixed-wing aircraft. It's a little bit more reliable. You can see some pictures of the airfield where the competition takes place, and some of the teams, and so forth. Our UAV research lab concentrates on the development of computer-based electronic systems for UAV applications. So basically, we build autopilots, flight control systems. We build payload systems, like we build electronics for video compression and decompression. And we're currently working on flight path planning and control systems for collaborative teams of UAVs. All of our aircraft are off-the-shelf, hobby-class model airplanes, stuff that you can buy, that you personally can go and buy. Some of them have been slightly modified for our use, but they're just basically model airplanes because we don't build the aircraft, we build the electronic system. Yes, we've had a number of sponsored research projects over the year, and some of them have come from the military. I have a few words to say about that before. In a second, but a lot of them have actually come from NASA Langley, and some of them have come from commercial industry. So we've done work for NASA Langley, a couple projects for NASA Langley Research Center, Army Research Lab, the U.S. Marine Corps through MITRE Corporation, and then the Navy and NASA through a small company in Charlottesville, Virginia called Farron Associates. And the sonobuoy glide kit development for rapid and precise delivery is for sonobuoys that are used to detect submarines, but the project that's underneath that is an adaptation of that for essentially for sulfur dioxide monitoring for volcanic plume measurement, which is using a lot of the same technology. Probably the most extensive program that we've been involved in and what really got us started was what's called the NASA Aerostar project, which the whole goal of this is to make airliners safer. And you can see there in the picture on the left-hand side Most airliners are tested in very strictly controlled situations, and yet during accidents they get into very uncontrolled situations. And since you can't actually take an airliner and turn it upside down or stall it or spin it, you really don't have much idea of how it controls in that situation. And Aerostar was all about figuring that out. The way it was done was using dynamically scaled models of, this is a Boeing 757, and it's got an 80-inch wingspan, it weighs about 56 pounds wet. This was a NASA research vehicle. We developed a lot of electronics for this system. And basically, the way this works is the aircraft takes off from an external pilot, then they hand control over to an internal pilot, a research pilot there, who's a commercially rated NASA aerodynamics engineer. He flies the aircraft through the designated set of experiments, and then down on the right-hand side or left-hand side there is the test engineer station. They take the aerodynamic data and then they produce that to determine what they want. A lot of the flying that we've done was at NASA's Wallops Island Flight Facility, which is where they just launched yesterday or the day before the Antares rocket, but it's basically out there on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. You can see one of the NASA aircraft being flown there, and then you can see the VCU aircraft we flew it in the same space there to test out some of our electronics before we put it on their aircraft. This is a quick, I'll run this, it's pretty short. But this is a video of one of the flights in the aircraft. Looking through, you'll see two views there. One, you'll see the synthetic vision display, which will be on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the forward-looking camera. And this is actually, they're flying the aircraft through a stall. And so you can see the synthetic vision displays in the upper left-hand corner. The forward-looking nose camera is in the right-hand corner. And you'll see they're flying the aircraft through a stall with the normal flight control laws that are using. You can see it results in a loss of control incident with the aircraft when the aircraft stalls. And what they do then is they apply their control algorithms to that, and they can fly that through the same scenario with their newly developed control algorithms and laws, and not lose control of the aircraft, which is the point. Our current research is in building collaborative teams of UAVs to perform a large task. So what we started out with was basically area search. So we have a number of these to solve a problem together as a group without having to have the ground operator be in the loop all the time. So you give them an area to search, geographic area to search, they communicate amongst themselves, they decide how many UAVs there are there, they divide up the search area, they lay out their own waypoints, and then they go and fly it. So that's what we're working on now. We've developed this is another one, this is our current aircraft we do a lot of flying with. It's a 5-6 foot wingspan, it weighs about 4 pounds, 5 pounds, electric powered glider that we use to carry our electronics basically. We don't have any video systems on board here because that's not what we're looking at. We're just looking at the collaborative algorithms, the algorithms that are used to determine which vehicle does which task and how to dynamically reallocate tasks when the situation changes and so forth. Okay, the research goals of the VCU UAV lab, like all university research, it's all about the students. Okay, so we want to provide the students the opportunity to participate in this cutting-edge technology. We want to provide the students with state-of-the-art equipment and access to state-of-the-art tools and design techniques. And we want to help the faculty, like me, and teach the students to stay up to date in advances in their respective fields. Okay, so that's really what we're all about. VCU UAV research is all student-led and student-performed. Over 40 undergraduate students have participated in the student UAV competition since 2003. We've graduated 10 masters and 1 PhD student, and we have another one working in the lab currently. Six students total. Sponsored funds, sponsored research funds are used for student stipends first and foremost, and tuition. Supplies for the research projects used by the students, and summer salaries for faculty sometimes, like me, because I don't get paid in the summer unless I have sponsored research to pay. So But priority is the student stipends and tuition and supplies and so forth first. VCU students have attained very high quality jobs in the UAV field. Average starting salary for folks that have earned a Bachelor of Science and elected for computer engineering and have gone into jobs in the UAV area is $65K per year starting salary. For masters in engineering in the same area, starting salary is about $90,000. Okay. UAVs and other autonomous vehicles are poised to be what's called a disruptive technology, just as computers were in the 1980s. So, just like computers, UAVs can and will be used by many different uses, for the greater good of society. Some of which we haven't really even envisioned yet. And if you go out there and start reading, every time I read an article about what people are thinking about UAVs, using UAVs for, and other unmanned vehicles, there's new things in there. Okay. The VCU will continue to be on the forefront of development of this technology and providing students access to it. As I said, that's what we do. And there were 5. We just had this past Friday. We just had the School of Engineering Senior Design Expo at the Science Museum of Virginia. And there were 5 UAV projects there that were totally independent from my lab. As a matter of fact, I only knew about one of them. All the other ones were students came up with the idea, wanted to do something in this area, and came up with a senior design project and did it in their area. Okay. Every other major school of engineering in the country, as well as in the Commonwealth, including University of Virginia, Virginia Tech, George Mason, even JMU, Old Dominion University, and hundreds of others have programs in this area. Okay. A couple of personal observations. These are just from me. They don't represent any kind of university opinions. These are my opinions. Okay. First of all, we're all here and gathered here under the auspices of academic freedom. Okay. And that means that as long as we are following the extensive policies and procedures that the university has for sponsored research, and we are, then this area is a legitimate area for us to do research in. Okay? Conducting research for the military or other government agencies is not inherently bad. Okay? As long as the above policies and procedures are followed. Okay? All universities in the Commonwealth and the country receive millions of dollars of research funds from DoD and associated companies and entities every year. Almost 200,000 Virginians are uniformed service personnel who work for the DoD, and almost 10% of Virginians work for some type of defense contractor or supplier. And I think most of those people would agree that doing sponsored research in these different areas is not inherently a bad thing. Okay. Me personally, I do not support the use of weaponized UAVs to attack targets. Okay. The drone assassination program, I don't like using that word. I don't support that. I also don't support the current paradigm of flying these things essentially from Creech Air Force Base or upstate New York. I think it's beneath us. And if you're a fan of the original Star Trek, you can go watch the episode called The Taste of Armageddon. You can see a little bit about the way I feel about it. Okay? I also support the Virginia legislation that places a temporary moratorium on UAV use by regulatory law enforcement agencies. I think there's potentially some privacy issues that need to be worked out there. And I think Virginia's always been, in my view, a pretty well-run state, and so taking a little bit of time to investigate this further is a good thing. But I think that these issues, these uses have to be addressed, and a lot of the laws for protecting privacy are already in place, particularly from the standpoint of use by private individuals. If I really wanted to look at somebody's window, I wouldn't go out and spend $1,000 on a hexagon and put a camera on the pole. So, and either way, there are legal issues with it already. So, final thing I'll say, if you really want to know more about the research that's taking place in our lab, okay, you don't have to file FOA requests, which are an incredible waste of time. Just come down and ask us. Show you what we're doing, what we're working on. We're happy to show you around. Every prospective student who comes to the School of Engineering gets a tour through our lab because all the students and their parents and everybody think that it's cool. It's new technology. It's neat. They want to see what we're doing. It's a great improvement to it, and it's good work. So, okay, that's it.
I want to emphasize that it's important that this is an educational event and not a biased one. So we're glad that we have kind of the nonviolent side of drones covered. And now we're going to move into our panel Q&A. These questions are general, not directed towards anyone in particular, and whoever wants to speak on them can. The first question is, if drone use in warfare increases, what are the perceived benefits?
I should go back and ask a couple of follow-up questions.
Sure.
Just really quick.
Yeah.
The one is, because I don't know how this works, but you're involved in all this creative engineering, these new lines of the unmanned vehicles, and presumably at some point for commercial interests who have a lot of interest in this. And I'm just wondering for students who are paying tuition and for all of us working at VCU, how it works in terms of technology transfer. So something's invented in the engineering school and then a commercial interest. And to go back to, I think it's kind of before this question, what are the benefits to, in addition to the students doing this great creative research, do we get
yes, that's actually a good question because in one of the things that was written about this is the quote was, VCU is giving its results to the military. And I can tell you for a fact that the university does not give anything to anyone at any time. The sponsored research that takes place, the entities that sponsor the research, as I said, they pay graduate student tuition, graduate student stipends, they pay for the supplies, they pay for summer salary, and on top of that, they pay 50% overhead. That overhead goes directly back to the university. So they're paying for all the students to be there, but they're also paying direct overhead for the use of the university facilities. In addition, when you have sponsored research that is done for the government retains what they call government usage license rights, which means that they say, well, we pay for it, we have the right to use it as the government for their purposes, but they do not have the right to use it commercially. The right to use the technology developed at the university commercially stays with the university. And the university has an Office of Technology Transfer to protect and basically market that intellectual property. And as a matter of fact, the intellectual property that's developed by the students, part of the ownership of that intellectual property belongs to the students.
And who are some of these corporate sponsors or entities?
Well, as I said, we've done sponsored research for the Army Research Lab, for NASA Langley, we did a project for MITRE Corporation, which was the money initially came from the United States Marine Corps. And we have two projects right now which we're working on with a company called Barry Associates in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a small business innovative research SBIR program. And they're the prime contractor and we're a subcontractor for them.
But as far as Boeing or Raytheon or General Atomics or Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman or any of these larger defense contractors, is there any association formally that you can disclose with VCU?
No, I mean I can. We don't do anything. The only thing that we can't disclose potentially is company proprietary information, but we're really not, working on anything that's proprietary now. So there really isn't. That's what I said. If anybody has any further questions, they can come and ask me because there really isn't anything that we can't disclose. That being said, we don't have any contracts with large defense contractors at this point in time. Although we have had students that have gone to work for them, but no, we don't have the sponsorship of companies like Boeing.
Could I revert to the question that I think was asked, which was to do with the use of drones in warfare? I think we don't get back to this. I think it's important to say that drones are such a piece of technology. And they're very good at doing lots of things. In particular, they're very good at surveillance. And as I think is described a lot of things that we all think they are. They're also very good at delivering weapons fairly precisely, not more precisely than most conventional weapons delivery systems. I think we're really only concerned about this not because of drones, though some of us might have a sort of science fictional view about this, but I think we're only concerned about this really because of two interconnected, complexly interconnected issues. And these have something to do with what's happened since 2001. One of them is that every single administration since 2001 has grown increasingly laws. And I think this is really, really important. That's to say, every United States administration has refused to obey by certain crucial parts of international law and has refused to go even by its own laws. Now, that's really important in one respect. A lot of what has been done by drones has been, not everything actually, but a lot of what has been done by drones and the sorts of things that concern us are things that have been justified under the laws of war on the grounds that we're involved in a war on terror. Now, it's very important to say that the war on terror, that is a metaphor. Just like the war on drugs is a metaphor, just like the Cold War, these were metaphors. The war on terror is not legally a war. And that's very important, because lots of the sorts of things that you can do during a war would be illegal in peacetime. So, for instance, in peacetime, and sometimes in war, it would be utterly illegal to send spies into a foreign country, violate their sovereignty, and kill their citizens, indeed kill even our own citizens. Now, that's what drones have been to a large extent doing. We've done this before. We've just sent spies in to do this. Now we can do it by drones. And I think what's concerning about drones here is nothing to do with their technology. It's to do with the general growing lawlessness of United States administrations. Let me say straight away, this is not a political point. I did vote for President Obama. I do think both of his administrations have been very bad. The other thing connected to this is a growing acceptance of surveillance of the public sphere. Now, I think it's important to say here that there's good and bad in this. In the United Kingdom, for instance, almost everywhere now is surveyed by CCTV. And all of these CCTV images are uploaded onto one or another centralized security agency. Now, this has a lot of good. There's no doubt it decreases the amount of drunkenness and disorderliness, which is a serious problem in the United Kingdom. On the other hand, it also means this, that if a couple of teenagers, or for that matter, senior citizens, kiss and fondle in a dark alley, they can be sure that someone is watching this. And you might think that there are gains here and there are losses. And I think a lot of people are concerned that we're moving in a particular direction here, in which we're gaining some gains, but we're losing some as well. And this is happening without very much public discussion. And drones, of course, are bound to make this much more. We have a lot of deeply embedded protection for privacy in the United States, but drones, it seems to me, are absolutely inevitable to become part of this movement. It's something which in the public sphere we need to talk about. So it seems to me that in a sense, the drones issue isn't really the problem here. It's the way in which drones have been used by these two particular developments in public life. Sorry to go on for so long.
That's okay. So for the next person, can everyone hear? All right.